Hey, good evening, everybody, or good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. I want to welcome everybody to yet another AOS Community Forum. It's exciting to be here tonight to present more aspects and more insights to our society and to invite questions and conversation from you all. Before we get started, though, I would like to go to the next slide, Crystal, please, and talk about the rules of engagement, which are the same for this webinar as they are for all of our other AOS webinars. And so basically, by participating in this webinar, participants are agreeing to maintain a safe environment for all participants, abide by AOS's virtual meeting event code of conduct, which I think is now in the chat. Please use the Q&A to submit questions or responses to the moderator, and use the chat function in Zoom to have dialogue with each other. So make comments and share your thoughts. And finally, by participating this year, agreeing to being recorded. We record these webinars to use them at future times and make them available for people who can't make it to this particular forum. All right, and so with that, what I'd like to do is introduce the topic for today's forum. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So for today's forum, what we'd like to do is focus on pathways to leadership within the AOS, within our society. And we basically have three different objectives for this forum. First, we want to highlight the opportunities for leadership in our society. We want to clarify for you the pathways to leadership positions. And then most importantly, we want to seek feedback from you all about those pathways, what you see as the benefits and also the barriers to leadership in our society. So to hit those objectives, what we're going to do is cover basically three different topics during the presentation and then open it up for Q&A. The topics that we'll be covering are a general introduction and overview about leadership in the society. And then we'll dive into two committees within AOS that really play a vital role in the leadership pipeline, bringing people into leadership positions. So those would be the membership committee and the nominations committee. So in addition to myself and Colleen Handel, who will be on in a moment, we are serving as your hosts. The other presenters for today will be Sarah Kaiser, who's the chair of the membership committee, Nick Mason, who's chair of the Early Professionals Committee and also a member of the membership committee, and then Lauren Benedict, who is the chair of the Nominations of Fellows and Elective Members Committee. So I think to think about leadership within our society and why be a leader and the reasons that we have leaders in our society, it's useful to think about the mission of the society. So Crystal, if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So the mission of AOS is to advance the scientific understanding of birds, to enrich ornithology as a profession, and to promote a rigorous scientific basis for the conservation of birds. In order to do that, we've set up several goals. These goals are modified and refined over time, and achieving those goals and setting those goals is really what the leaders of our society do. And this all happens in a few different ways. If I could go to the next slide. And I showed this slide at an earlier AOS community forum, but I think it's a very useful one for understanding how a society like ours operates. So it's useful to think of the analogy of a bike. So we as AOS members, the society itself is riding a bike. And the rear tire of that bike is propelling the bike forward. It's the power to move us forward. It's the power that keeps us going towards achieving our goals. And that rear tire for AOS is comprised of the executive director and our professional staff. And right now we have about 6 paid staff in AOS, and I will add tangentially that they are very professional and very excellent. We're lucky to have them. And in addition to the professional staff, we have a number of nearly 30 volunteer committees. And I'll say something more about the volunteer committees in a moment. But needless to say, those committees are the groups that do the heavy lifting for the society to make sure that the work gets done. And then finally, because we do have 2 professional journals, we also have an editorial team that makes sure that the editorial work is going forward. So that's the rear tire that's propelling us forward. The front tire of the bike is the executive committee and council. And what that group together is doing is long-range planning, decision-making, budget oversight, those sorts of things that really determine the direction of the bike. So that's the steering mechanism that guides us towards where we're going with respect to achieving our mission. And so I'd like to say just a couple of things about the executive committee and council so that everybody understands better who they are and where they come from. So if I could have the next slide, please, Crystal. So the executive committee is comprised of several elected officers. So these are officers that are elected by you, the membership. So that includes the president. Right now, that's me. Colleen Handel, the president-elect, who I'll be introducing in a minute. Andy Jones is the current secretary for our society and has been doing that for several years, doing an excellent job with that for several years. And currently, Matt Carling is our treasurer, and Matt just stepped into that role very recently and is learning the ropes, but doing a great job. So in addition to these elected officers, we also have the executive director of the society, Judith Scarl, who rounds out the executive committee. The executive committee works very closely with council. If we could see the next slide, please. Yeah, so the executive committee and council together work to guide the bike and steer the bike forward. Council itself is comprised of about 15 different counselors, so that we have 4 elected counselors. Each year we elect 4 counselors, and the term for each counselor lasts 3 years. And so we have sort of a steady state equilibrium of 12 elected counselors in council. And I'm showing the names of the current counselors on the screen right now. And then in addition, we have the 3 most recent past presidents also are voting members of council. So this group together is really voting on and making day-to-day decisions about budget, about direction, about achieving our goals. If I could have the next slide, please. A couple of other important groups that you should know something about are the elective members and the fellows of the AOS. So the elective members are individuals who are chosen for significant contributions to ornithology and/or the society. And right now we have over 500 elective members. And then fellows are nominated to those positions based on their exceptional and sustained contributions to ornithology and/or the society. Elective members fellows, elective members become fellows. So you have to be an elective member to become a fellow. But the fellows kind of set the broad outline of how the society operates, in the sense that the fellows vote on the articles of incorporation and the bylaws that govern the basic functioning of our society. And then currently we have, again, over 500 fellows in the society. If I could have the next slide, please, Crystal. So then finally, I really want to emphasize this. Our society, AOS, has nearly 30 very active and very important committees that really undertake a whole lot of very important but somewhat specific work. So each committee has a specific task in front of them, and the individuals on those committees are the ones that make sure that the work gets done. The chairs of these committees are appointed by the president, but we're always looking for eager and enthusiastic members to serve on these committees. So if you scan this last list of committees here and see a few of them that jump out to you, I really encourage you to go to the AOS website, look a little more closely at those committees. There's a brief description of what each committee does. And if it's something that seems important to you or appealing to you, reach out to the chair of that committee and ask about, is there space available on the committee? And a little bit later, Sarah and Nick will say something more specific about which committees are more suitable for different kinds of members. And so with that, I want to thank you for listening. I'll be back at the end of the presentation for Q&A, but I'd like to turn it over right now to Colleen Handel.
Hi, everybody. Crystal, can I have the next slide, please? I'm going to talk today, just briefly, give you an introduction to some ideas about some of the benefits of leadership in the AOS and some of the barriers that we see and things that we want to hear from you about on both of these topics. I and then the rest of the speakers will give you a little snapshot of how we got into AOS, into our various leadership positions. And so you'll see a similar graphic like this from all the rest of the speakers, just to give you an idea of how the different pathways can be traveled for various members of the society. So mine is probably a little bit different from most people in that I'm coming in as a federal research scientist with USGS rather than through the university pathway that so many members of us follow otherwise. And I started in 1978 as a member of Cooper Society and the American Ornithological Union, which, of course, as you all know, have since merged and become our great AOS right now. So I've been a member for a very long time. My leadership pathway with the society started with our journals. So I started out as a peer reviewer, and then after a while of being a peer reviewer, I was invited to become an associate editor of the AWC, which is now Ornithology. And then I became a senior editor for the Condor, which is now Ornithological Applications. So that was really my doorway into leadership and service to our society. Along the way, I was asked to serve on the nominations committee for elective members and counselors, which Lauren is going to talk to you a little bit about a little bit later. And then subsequently invited to serve as a leader of the nominations committee for counselors and officers. And during the last several years, I've also been very actively involved with the meeting coordination committee and served as the local chair for the Alaska meeting in 2019. As far as my elected pathway, I was elected as an elective member and then a fellow based on scientific contributions and service. And both of those are mostly honorary roles, but as Mike explained, there are responsibilities as well in terms of overall leadership in the society and guidance of where we go. I was then invited to run for and was elected as a member of council, and most recently elected as president-elect. And again, a person serves for 2 years as president-elect and then moves into the president position. So both of those are extremely high honors and also require quite a bit of service responsibilities. So as far as member benefits, it's like, what are the member benefits for being a part of and being one of the people who contributes to the service for our largely volunteer society? First of all, I joined to get access to our journals. Way back in the day, they were just printed, and the only way you could really get them was either to go to the library or to get them delivered to you by being a member. Currently, that's all online now, but you have free access to all articles for both our journals and Birds of the World, which are incredible benefits in and of themselves. There are also reduced publication costs. Annual meetings were a huge benefit of being a member of our society. They provide an opportunity for us to share our science and network with other ornithologists. As a member, you get reduced registration rates. My editorial experience was hugely beneficial to me. So as I've grown with the society, I've seen that by giving to the society, I also gain a lot. And for example, being an editor helped me improve my writing skills. It helped me keep on top of what the latest science was, because I was getting articles before they even hit the press. So it's a great way to become involved and to increase your scientific expertise. Helping with organizing meetings is a huge way to meet other individuals throughout the society, because there's so many people involved with organizing the meetings. Plus, you have a way of shaping the meeting experience. to make it the way that you would like to have a meeting yourself. Professional status of being an elected member, a fellow, a member of council, president-elect, those all help with professional recognition. Expanded networking is probably one of the biggest benefits of all. Meeting other scientists, sharing information, sharing experiences. And then probably the best benefit of all is the lifelong friendships that you're able to develop. Next slide, please. So what are some of the benefits of leadership in general? Whether it be committee work, editorial work, being on the council, being an elected officer, you have the opportunity to influence the foundations of ornithology, the science, educational outreach, conservation, so many different ways at both national and international levels. You can also ensure that our discipline is open, diverse, and connected to the broader world. You know, as a federal scientist, that was a really important piece for me as well. You have the opportunity for career growth and opportunities for collaboration and networking. And as I said before, it can be really fun. You meet lots of great people in our society, people that you can share your passion with. And it's really great to be able to work with people at this level. Next slide, please. So what are some of the barriers to leadership? I mean, when we look at our leadership, we see that it doesn't reflect our membership exactly, or the way that we would like to. And those are things that we've been thinking about and would like to correct. And some of those things are, I think, generational in nature. The people who are elected to the leadership positions are from a previous generation, you know, earlier generation, generally just by the way that this is structural. And but there are other things that I think that we can change, and they're due to current practices. For example, if we fail to rotate committee chairs and members regularly, that means that we're blocking the opportunity for other people, other voices to be heard by moving into those committees. So one of the things we're working on is rotating committee chairs and members. The other is if we have an insufficient nomination process, or if it's biased in some way for elected members, then we're immediately blocking the pathways for individuals to become fellow, counselor, a secretary, or president. So these things are practices that we can change. Next slide, please. Other barriers are various in nature, and I'm sure you'll come up with other ones that we'd love to hear about. But for example, members might be unaware of leadership opportunities and pathways. Similarly, the current leadership might be unaware of many talented members who are actually interested in future leadership. And because we don't know them personally and can't tap them on the shoulder and don't have a process in place to find them, we might not know that you are out there and really want to do this. There might not be enough information available about candidates who are up for voting for election. If we don't have enough information about people, too often what can happen is that the people with the greatest current name recognition will get elected. And so what we may need to do is to fix that piece so that we gain more information about the candidates who are running. There might be too few training, mentorship, and leadership development opportunities. That is another thing that we can fix. Next slide, please. So potential solutions: regular rotation of committee positions. We're already working on that. Improved nomination process. Lauren's going to talk about that. Training, mentorship, leadership development. We'd love to hear from you what you would like to see in this realm. Better communication in general from us to the members about the opportunities and pathways to leadership. Next slide, please. So how do we improve our communication? First, we have forums like this, where we talk about what committees are available, what leadership positions are all about, and what are the pathways to get there. We would like to communicate more about the time and commitment that are expected. It really varies from committee to committee how much time is expected for various things. What are the benefits of networking opportunities? If people understood those more, they might be more inclined to explore these opportunities. We've thought about setting up an electronic bulletin board for vacancies and volunteer opportunities. And we've also talked about having a more open and transparent process for nominations. And Lauren has already, and her committee have already worked to improve upon this. We've talked about having candidates give bigger, larger responses to more varied questions of interest to the membership so that you have a bigger basis on which to decide which candidate would best represent your views. And we've also talked about having committee leaders become ambassadors to underrepresented groups. Sometimes that personal invitation to participate can make all the difference in the world to letting somebody know that yes, your input is valued, and yes, we would love to have you working alongside of us to do all these volunteer opportunities that are available with our society. So as we go through, please share your ideas with us. We're looking for input from you about not only what you think are benefits, but also, more importantly, what are the barriers to having people participate in these various positions? So now what we'd like to do, next slide, please, is we'd like to have an interactive poll and just get some ideas from you right now about what you see as the most important personal benefits from service to a professional society. And you can select all that you think apply. So let's keep this open for a little bit. So please go ahead and vote for what you think is most important to you by volunteering with a professional society such as AOS. So I know it might be hard to choose from amongst all these things, but you can choose more than one. And I think our Lauren is going to let us know when it looks like most people have voted. Okay, looks like we've got about 86% response rate. So here we go. Networking building, I would agree. Yeah, building connections with colleagues. The opportunity to influence the future of ornithology, that is huge. And it's really true how much impact you can have. Giving back, that's why I started, was to give back to the society that had given me so much. Improving leadership skills, believe me, you do learn a lot in that regard, and looks good on a resume. Yeah, okay, and the others. So anybody who responds to other, please put notes in the chat or let us know. We'd really like to hear what other benefits that you have. Okay, so let's go ahead with the next slide, please. So just one more poll here. What do you see as the most significant barriers to service or volunteering in a professional society like AOS? And again, you can choose more than one answer. So this is super important because these are the things that we really want to work on in terms of leadership. I know that when I started, the AOS was, or at that time, the AOU and Cooper were both big black boxes to me. So it was really a learning experience for me to understand how to get involved and that I could get involved and what all the different committees were. So for me, it was mostly a lack of knowledge on what was available and that I could even play a part. So. Okay, we get a response from Bob Montgomery about the other benefit was the benefit from volunteering is simply learning more about ornithology. And that's really true because you're exposed to a lot of different people from various aspects of our field. Okay, here's the answer for poll number 2. Don't have the time. That's a perennial problem, isn't it? Don't know what opportunities are available. That was my problem. Unclear what different volunteer opportunities would entail. Okay, so we need to get the information out there. Wow, nobody answered that they're not interested in volunteering. That's amazing. We are so glad to hear that. Yeah, it can be hard to get advisors or supervisors to encourage that. And that might be something that we can encourage somehow in terms of positive feedback or the service, the importance of service to these organizations. Long-term commitment, again, it really varies a lot from committee to committee what kind of level of commitment is required. So these are all really, really helpful. Okay, thank you very much. I think we're going to go to the next slide now and continue on. So I'm going to hand this off now to Sarah Kaiser, who was the chair of our very active membership committee. And she and Nick are going to talk about some really interesting aspects of the membership. So Sarah.
All right, well, hi everyone. So we'll start off with saying thank you to Mike and Colleen and Jude for inviting Nick and I to participate in today's forum. So we wanted to start by sharing our pathways to our leadership roles in AOS. And we also wanted to share some of the tangible and intangible benefits of active engagement and service through the Society's committees. And so I attended my first ornithology meeting in 2001 to present my undergraduate research. But from there, I've really had a very nonlinear career path that has led me in and out of academic and non-academic career sectors as I received training and applied that training in research and conservation positions. My service to the Society actually didn't begin until 2013, the summer that I defended my dissertation. So I was in Chicago at the annual meeting. I was looking at the bulletin board that's always up and saw a slip of paper asking people to contact Mike Butler if they were interested in becoming a member of the Early Professionals Committee that he was working to revive because it had gone dormant for a few years. And so for me, I was immediately interested because I was strongly motivated to contribute my ideas on how to make the Society more inclusive of diverse career paths so that all professional ornithologists, both academic and non-academic, felt supported no matter what career they chose to pursue. And so I was a very active member of the Early Professionals for 3 years. And when Mike was preparing to rotate off, he asked me if I'd be interested in taking on the role of chair. And after a year of overlapping with Mike as a co-chair, I chaired the Early Professionals Committee for 3 years. And so during those years, I was also asked to join the Meetings Coordination Committee to represent the ideas of the early professionals. So we focused on including programming at our annual meetings that spotlighted early professionals, provided networking and mentoring opportunities, and also professional development through targeted workshops. And during that time, I also served on the membership committee, which used to be composed of the chairs of those committees that fall under a category called membership services. But under Mike Butler's leadership, this was changed to be a committee that's now open to anyone to join, to encourage multiple voices in the conversation about what new initiatives might best serve our members, which to me was a very positive step for membership. And after 3 years, I rotated off Early Professionals and agreed to become the chair of membership. And I spent a year overlapping with the incoming co-chair of Early Professionals, which is Nick Mason, while overlapping as the co-chair of membership with Mike. So that's my pathway to the roles that I've had that were leadership roles within AOS. But I'll also say that each year at the annual meetings, I volunteered regularly to serve as a judge of the paper and poster sessions and organized multiple symposia for early professionals. So my elected positions that I have been an elective member, I became in 2017, and that allowed me to be nominated by my peers to serve on the AOS Council. And I became a fellow just last year in 2020, and I'm currently finishing the last year of my 3-year term on Council. So my committee service overall to AOS is really focused on addressing the challenges that I think face early professionals and to identify the needs of members at every career stage and especially across different career sectors. And as a voting member of Council, I'm in a position to promote initiatives that are developed by our committees that really strengthen our programs and events, publishing, and professional development activities. And I know that I have benefited many ways, very tremendously, from the AOS. And I would say that the AOS has really valued and supported me through publications and awards that definitely have boosted my career in many ways, including the opportunity to present my first plenary talk. And I've also developed a really strong professional network, some leadership skills, and most importantly, lasting friendships that really enrich the annual meetings for me, which is really a reunion of some of my very best friends. And so that's my pathway. And I'm going to pass it off to Nick to share his story. Next slide.
All right, hey everyone. So thanks so much, Sarah, for passing the mic. And in many ways, thinking about this, my path is similar to Sarah's, but I think it's also helpful for me to think about kind of how I came into ornithology. And I didn't actually arrive at ornithology as a passion until my master's degree. And so I attended my first AOS meeting back in 2010 and immediately felt sort of a sense of community and engagement and involvement and support. And from then, I started to volunteer with the Student Affairs Committee. And so my first involvement with them was with a meeting in 2012, where I helped basically just organize one event, which was the Student Professional Dinner. And that was a really great experience. I was active in terms of organizing that sole event. And at the time, we were a very small committee. And so after that, I was essentially asked if I wanted to help out and lead as chair for that committee. So I agreed to do that. And for, I think, about 3 or 4 years, I was chair of that committee. And during that time, we were really focused on thinking about in-person events at the conference. And so we would do things like organize student mentor lunches, professional dinners, the quiz bowl, even got to MC the quiz bowl a few times. But one of the really nice things as an aside that I see as happening is that the Student Affairs Committee is growing and expanding and also looking for ways to engage students outside of the in-person meetings. And so just as an aside, I think that's a really excellent development. But so anyway, as chair of the Student Affairs Committee, I was sort of the liaison between students and some of the other committees that were being formed at the time. So as Sarah mentioned, I was participating in the membership committee as well. And during that time, we had a poll where we were curious to learn about the various benefits, perceived benefits, and ways in which people were choosing to be members of AOS. And that was a really cool opportunity because it got to lead to working with Mike Butler and Jen Owen on a letter to the editor where we kind of reported on those results. And so I'm continuing on as a member of the membership committee now. But there were various other ways during my time as Student Affairs Committee that I got to work with sort of tangentially other groups. And so with the Meeting Coordination Committee, I helped out actually with doing some of the scientific program. And I kept sort of finding small ways to volunteer and help out. And that helped me kind of give back to what I perceived as my home society and also expanded my professional network. And so that was a huge benefit that's really benefited me throughout my career. And one other way in which I've become involved and sort of my path to where I currently am is that I also started contributing to ornithological knowledge. And so as a master's student, I wrote a couple of accounts for Birds of the World. And some of my research involves taxonomy. And so I started submitting proposals to do taxonomic revisions to things like the North American Classification Committee and the South American Classification Committee. And then that led to actually becoming part of what was called the Student Systematics Group. And now I'm actually a member of the North American Classification Committee. And so sort of involvement that initiated as volunteerism became more of a leadership role within these individual committees as well. And so I've also experienced a ton of benefits from this. I've received a number of awards that have helped me immensely from AOS in terms of research and travel to conferences, and also with publications and status as an elected member. And also, along with Sarah, I was able to give a plenary. But as Sarah mentioned, I think really it helps expand your network. And I identify as an ornithologist, and it's really enriched my appreciation for birds and the breadth of research that ornithologists do. So yeah, that's essentially sort of my path. I'm going to now pass it back to Sarah, and she's going to talk about some of the things that the membership committee is currently doing.
So next slide. All right, so what does the membership committee do? Well, our primary goals of the membership committee are to develop strategies for retaining, increasing, and diversifying the membership of the society. We evaluate the ways to best serve and engage our members and provide meaningful opportunities for all of you to contribute to your profession. And currently our committee is fairly small. So we had 10 members, including myself, in 2021. And typically we will have 4 quarterly meetings, 3 that are virtual and 1 in person at the annual meeting. So we start off the year discussing what we want to focus on accomplishing in the next year. We usually divide up the labor on 1 to 3 projects, outline steps, and then check in on our progress as needed. And as chair, I often get asked to represent our committee's ideas at council meetings and in strategic planning meetings with members of the executive committee. And I also will work with the committee to write up an annual report of all of our committee's activities that's reviewed and approved by the council at the end of the year. This can include a proposed budget for any kind of social and professional development activities that we might want to do either virtually or in person, goals for the next year, and topics for discussion with the council. Next slide. The primary project that we worked on last year was to develop this membership welcome packet. So the goal of the packet was to provide new and returning members a document that welcomes them to the society, but provides some of the broad strokes regarding how the AOS actually functions, clarifies how you can get involved, and really helps members understand what we call the unwritten rules of engaging with the AOS, which I think is really important to be very transparent. And so listed here on this slide are some of the contents of the packet. So Mike and Colleen have touched on the first 4 sections, and Nick and I are going to focus today on demystifying the governance structure of AOS, which Mike introduced, the various categories of those 30 committees that were listed, and highlight which of those are open to anyone and those that have restricted membership for various reasons, and how you can get involved in your society. So I'm going to pass it over to Nick again. Next slide.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So this is a governance map that our membership committee put together, and I want to give a shout out to Olivia Utley, who helped draft this together, and Christine Schmidt as well for helping put this together. And this is hopefully a broad assessment of the 28 different committees that you saw Mike list earlier, and that's sort of a dizzying number, so it's confusing to think about how you can get involved and how they're all related to each other. And while this is depicted as somewhat of a top-down relationship, it's important to remember that a lot of these have intercommunications between them, and there's reciprocal feedback among many of these units. But it's really helpful at a broad scale to think about the different ways in which these committees are serving the society. And so the broad groups that we have here are things like nominations, which Lauren will talk about later, member services and programs, awards, archives, and ornithological knowledge. And each of these committees that are shown here have been color-coded to indicate how those members or how those committees are populated. And so if you look at the bottom, green refers to elected positions. So as Mike mentioned at the very beginning, the executive committee and the AOS councils are positions that are held by people that are elected to those positions. Whereas in blue, things like bylaws and ethics and finance are things that are appointed by the president or council. And things that you see in sort of the orangey color are committees that are open to anyone. And so if you are someone who's interested in diversity and inclusion, or in bird collections, or perhaps promoting membership, things like that, those are committees that you can join today and start helping out with. Ones that are in purple are those that are defined by bylaws, and those that are in red are those that are by invitation. But as a caveat, I'll say those that are red often have ways to get involved. So for instance, I mentioned how I work on the North American Classification Committee, and I was really involved in taxonomy, and so as a student I reached out to them and was able to participate. So in many of these cases, you can identify an area within ornithology, whether that's a piece of ornithological knowledge, if that's conservation or maybe museum collections, or an initiative that you care about like diversity and inclusion, and you can find ways to get involved. So yeah, I think we'll go on to the next slide, please. And so there's a lot of different ways to get involved, as we've shown here with our sort of individual paths. And you can hopefully get a quick assessment of that from that governance map. And you can see that there's these various categories, but in addition to the categories, there's lots of AOS events. And just by coming to this event, you become more involved already. But there are things like annual events at annual meetings, as well as professional development and training opportunities throughout the year, networking events and social mixers, and member forums and roundtables that you can use to find ways in which you can get more involved with the society. And if you're interested in joining any of these committees, you can shoot an email to the one that's shown there, so info@americanornithology.org, and they can provide you with information and people to contact to get more involved with those specific committees. All right, so now I'm going to pass it back to Sarah.
All right, next slide. Okay, so what are we going to be up to in this coming year? Are the membership committees. So this coming year, we have a new co-chair. So Dai Shizuka will be overlapping with me as I rotate off as chair next year. And we're also recruiting new members to membership. So we've had a few current members that are also rotating off. So if you're interested, please do contact me or shoot an email to the general email that Nick shared. And we're going to meet this coming month to iron out really what we want to focus on. But some of the ideas that we came up in our annual report last year was to focus on sharing committee activities and accomplishments in the membership welcome packet. So this will be something that is a living document that we update. And we really want to hear from all the chairs of the committees and their members and really find out what it is that they're doing. And hopefully that will help new members really figure out where they best want to contribute their time and energy. Another focus will be to evaluate some of these new member initiatives across the society. So that again involves working with all these different committees. We also want to find out what committees actually are looking for new members, which I'm guessing is most, and try to match the new AOS members to the committees that really meet their interests in service and also professional interests. And so a strong theme of membership is really to work with other committees. So we want to stay informed about the needs and values of all of our members, and that's the way we can do that. And so that brings us to this next poll. So if you want to go to the next slide. So if you will respond to this question, so what do you value most about membership in AOS? And select all of those that you think apply. And I think I'm going to pass this off to Colleen to go over the results.
Thanks, Sarah. I think Lauren will let us know when we have most people voting. Again, lots of different values here. I think I've benefited from almost all of them myself. Okay, here we go. Again, okay, networking opportunities and other professional development opportunities and being part of a community. Yep, those three, really top for, I think, most of us. Access to the journals, of course, and free publishing, really important benefits. Opportunities to receive awards. So again, pay attention to the awards and the announcements that come out, because many of you would be eligible for these travel awards, research awards, various things. And we will try to make sure that the communications are out there so you know when they're available. And the opportunity to influence the future of ornithology. Great. Okay, thank you all for your input on this. It's great. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to pass it off to Lauren, who will talk to you about her work with AOS. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Colleen, and hi, everybody. I'm glad to see you all here today. This is a great event. I'm excited to be part of it. So like the others, I thought I'd give you just a sort of quick overview of some of the things that helped me get more and more involved in AOS and some of my leadership roles. I first just started volunteering for meeting coordination, and then I helped to judge student presentations. At some point, I was asked to be an associate editor for the AWK when it was the AWK, and it all just kind of, I think once you get more involved, you build up this network and it makes it more easy and also more rewarding to get more involved. And as you go, I found that really built a really nice network for me, and I really enjoyed that. Eventually, I was elected to be an elective member, and then a fellow, and then I was elected to council, and I'm now in my third year of my council term. Sarah and I are in the same council class. And I'm here today because that pathway, in order to become a counselor, I had to be an elective member first. And I'm now the chair of the nominations of Fellows and Elective Members Committee, and we want to help ensure that people who have great interest and can do great things for AOS are being voted into those elective member roles and eventually fellow roles so that they can take on these leadership positions. So this is all coded in the bylaws, so we can go to the next slide. That there are several sort of parts of being an elective member or a fellow. First of all, they're just honors that the society bestows on members. And I think that's one of the really great things that professional societies do, is that they celebrate their members for excellence in the field. And it's sort of a wonderful way that we can, forward the success of ornithology and ornithologists. So I'm glad to be part of this committee that gets to do that. But then in addition to being a recognition or an honor, it has more of a function in terms of specific leadership roles. So as this shows at the bottom, this is part of the bylaws that recognizes or that indicates that certain offices can only be held by people who have been elected to that elective member or fellow class. So to be a president-elect, secretary, or an elective counselor, you need to be either an elective member or a fellow, which means that we need to get good people into those elective member and fellow membership classes. So if we go to the next slide, we can think about how we do that. And so I took over as the chair of the nominations of fellows and elective members just over a year ago, about a year ago now. And one of the things that I learned when I first served on the committee as a member for a year, and one of the things that was really interesting to me was just trying to understand the process of how all this works. And I think that a lot of people, maybe many of you who are here today, don't really know how it is you become an elective member or a fellow. So we want to be as transparent and clear about that as possible so that everybody has the opportunity to be part of these membership classes and to be honored in this way. And there are kind of two ways that you can become an AOS elective member or a fellow. First of all, you can be nominated by 3 existing fellows or 3 existing elective members to that membership class. And this happens a lot. And this is, a great way that we get a lot of excellent nominees and people moving into these roles over time. But it also is a little bit of an insider's network, and we recognize that, right? If you need to be nominated by 3 existing fellows and you don't know any current AOS fellows, that can be a barrier to you moving into that particular membership class. So we also have this nominations of fellows and elective members committee. And we see our role as a committee is really to help make sure that all members of AOS have equal opportunity to become elective members and fellows. And that's our goal very much. And so we do this both by just surveying the membership and looking for members who are engaged in committee work and who are publishing great papers and who are doing great conservation initiatives and contributing to ornithology as a discipline in a range of different ways. And we might reach out and ask them if they would like to stand for elective member or fellow. In addition, the committee recognizes that we can't possibly know everybody in the AOS, so we ask all of the AOS members to nominate people. So we will take suggested names, and even if you are not a fellow or an elective member, which means you don't technically have the power to nominate someone, you can suggest the name to the committee. The committee then can nominate that person. And in this way, everyone in society can participate in helping to generate elective members and fellows. So we encourage you to please suggest names to us. If we go to the next slide, there's a little more information about how you do that. Right now, the nomination season is open. So if you have suggestions, this is the time to send them along. You can put them in through the AOS member portal. It does request a CV of the suggested nominee if you yourself are not putting in a full nomination with the signatures of 3 fellows. If you're suggesting it to the committee, we do ask for a CV and some information, and we welcome self-nominations. We want to ensure that anybody in the society who thinks that they are qualified for this has access to it and can put themselves forward. We also recognize that you might not know if you are qualified and that certain people might be more hesitant to put their own name forward. So we have tried to clarify some guidelines to help people understand, what does make you qualified to be an elective member. And that is linked here. And if you're interested, it's also I think we can probably put the link in chat, but that information is in the member portal. And if you want to go in and potentially nominate someone, all of this information is there. And in this way, if you think that you might like to be an elective member, please go see if you are sort of fitting our guidelines for expected qualifications, and we would love to consider you. And we're hoping that by doing it this way and opening it up to these self-nominations, we're going to get more nominations that are not, that are diverse and that are coming from across the society, from all branches of the society, and that are inclusive of really all types of ornithologists that work and are part of AOS. So that's kind of my overview. Unfortunately, my committee is not one that is generally open. It's one of the ones that is defined by bylaws. But if you have any feedback on this process, I would love to hear from any of you who are out there. And with that, hopefully the process is a little more clear to you. And I think we have then one more poll that we will jump to. Okay, so what would make you more likely to consider a leadership role, committee chair, counselor, etc. with AOS? So please choose all that apply. And then I, like Sarah, will kick it back to Colleen for a little more discussion and follow up.
Yeah, I'd also like to mention that the nominations are currently open for council and for officers as well. So not only for elected members and fellows, but also for all of our councilors are voting members. Really important opportunities there for leadership. So I think we're waiting for a few more folks to add their input here. It'd be fantastic to hear from you all. Okay, results. Okay, we talked about communication. It looks like we need more of that. So Thank you for that. Outreach from an existing AOS leader. Okay, so again, we don't want to totally rely on tapping people on the shoulder that we already know. So it's important that you let us know too if you're interested, because we might not know you're out there. So it has to be two-way. So let us know for sure, but definitely we will tap people on the shoulder. Outreach from a friend colleague. Again, we were talking about that ambassadorship. So I think that sounds like a really good opportunity there. Experience, honestly, you know, as everybody was talking about, you start out on one committee or one role, and then you get more experience, your network expands, your ability to work on other committees, and it becomes, I mean, it's just amazing how more involved you can become as you go along, and it's really super rewarding. More diversity in existing leadership. Yep. Okay. So that again is what we're trying to work on. So tangible incentives. Yep. We'll have to think about that. Somebody mentioned that, and we should think more about what that would entail. So if anybody has specific ideas on these things as well, it'd be really fantastic to hear from you. So Mike, I'm going to bring you back in too, and we can open it up for a little time we have left for additional questions.
Great, thanks. Yeah, we don't have a ton of time, but I do want to open it up for Q&A. Again, as a reminder, if you have a question, please do type it into the Q&A box, and the various panelists, whoever's most appropriate, can answer that question. And while you think about questions, I do want to re-emphasize, I guess it should be clear from today's forum and the presentations that we've just gone through, that AOS is very, very, very interested in widening the pipeline toward leadership positions. We really want to bring in a diverse set of leaders who really can help guide the society forward and help guide ornithology into the future. Some of you listening to this today can be part of that, and we want you to be part of that. If you think you can be part of that, please don't hesitate to explore the opportunities that are available to you now to gain some sort of leadership position. So we want to know what questions you have about opportunities for or pathways to leadership. And if we can go to the next slide, we also want to ask you all a couple of questions about the barriers you see to becoming a leader in AOS and what your suggestions are on how to overcome these barriers. We had some poll questions that address this, but I think this is an opportunity to discuss more openly, and we really, really want to hear your suggestions. And in particular, how can we encourage a broader range of students to explore the volunteer opportunities? It's very important to the society, to the current leadership of the society, that we really engage and bring in the earlier career members of our society to play those leadership roles. I think Sarah, Nick, Lauren, they're all great examples of people who very early on in their careers got involved and are helping guide the ship. So any thoughts you have about that would be great. Okay, so we do have a question here, is which committees are currently recruiting members other than the membership committee? So Sarah mentioned the membership committee is currently recruiting. I personally don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Colleen or Jude knows, but what I would say is for any committee that you think you can be on, it never hurts to reach out to the chair of that committee, who's listed on the website, and ask, are you recruiting? I'm interested in what your committee does. Are there opportunities there?
Mike, I wanted to highlight another similar question that we got in the chat that was, sometimes it's not clear which committees are open to students. And Sarah answered that question and said that all committees that are open to students unless there's a conflict of interest. So for example, the Student Research Awards Committee is not open to students, but pretty much everything else is. So we really encourage students to reach out and get involved.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and it looks like Nick has told us that the Early Professional Committee and the Student Affairs Committee are both recruiting for sure. And I know if anybody else is interested in helping with the meeting coordination committee, we could use more help with that.
Yep.
So currently planning for the upcoming conference, and we could use more help for sure. So let us know if you are interested. Oh, there we go. So Christine just put a note in the chat about there's a general website about the committees and then the planning that's underway for the annual meeting. So that is definitely underway and very, very busy. So lots of opportunity, and it's a great way to interact with people from throughout the society, because you have all of these different aspects that come together in the meeting itself. And so it's a really great way to network with people.
Yeah. There was also a suggestion in the chat that the chart, the governance roadmap that Nick showed, a suggestion that maybe that should be put on our website. I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I'm sure we can do that. And Sarah or Nick, am I correct that either is now or will be also in the membership packet?
Yeah, I think that's right. So we'll include that there as well. But I agree. I think it'd be great to have that on the website too.
Yeah, it's a nice clarifying roadmap that that can help people understand where they can plug into the system. Okay, so we are over time, I see. This has been great. It's been nice getting the input from all of you in the forum per se, but we know no matter how many people come to the forum, it's just a sliver of our membership. So I'd really like to encourage all of you who are here today to talk about this with your friends, other members of the society who couldn't be here today. Encourage them to watch the video of this and or to reach out to any of us about membership and leadership opportunities in our society. So thanks so much for your time, your dedication to AOS, and let's keep it going, right? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.